There is a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
Mr. Schmidt recently arrived in a small Bavarian village which lies 8 miles northwest of Munich. A picturesque, delightful little spot, one time known for its scenery, but more recently related to other events having to do with some of the less positive pursuits of man. Human slaughter, torture, misery, and anguish. Mr. Schmidt, as we will soon perceive, has a vested interest in the ruins of a concentration camp. For once, some 17 years ago, his name was Gunther Lutze. He held the rank of a captain in the SS. He was a black uniformed, strutting animal whose function in life was to give pain. And like his colleagues of the time, he shared the one affliction most common amongst that breed known as Nazis. He walked the earth without a heart. And now former SS Captain Lutze will revisit his old haunts, satisfied perhaps that all that is awaiting him in the ruins on the hill is an element of nostalgia. What he does not know, of course, is that a place like Dachau cannot exist only in Bavaria. By its nature, by its very nature, it must be one of the populated areas of the Twilight Zone.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema, the Twilight Zone series. I'm your host, Jimbo.
And in studio, your co-host, 80Z.
80Z, a little break from the fifth dimension off work here in the southern layer. So, Eric, here we go. Finally, we've hit a gold mine in Season 3 with this episode, Death's Head Revisited. What a weird name.
Yeah, we'll talk about the origins of the title, and it's definitely a somber, dark episode, but a good episode.
Oh, yeah, very. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and jump right in. We won't waste any time. The title for this Twilight Zone episode is Death's Head Revisited, as Jimbo alluded to. This is the Twilight Zone Season 3, Episode number 9, and it was directed by Don Medford. It was written by Rod Serling. Actually, I think he only took 2 weeks. In my notes, it said he took 2 weeks to write the whole episode, and we'll look at the inspiration for the episode. It was originally aired on November the 10th, 1961, and you know what time it is. That heavenly time. On this day in history. For November the 10th, 1961. And before I jump in, Jimbo, did you have a song?
I looked up the old Breakfast at Tiffany's. Is still number one at the box office.
Okay, so for November of 1961, Breakfast at Tiffany's. That's your box office leader. That's good stuff. All right, let's go back about 20 years or so. On November 10th, 1940, Walt Disney begins serving as an informer for the Los Angeles office of the FBI. I had no idea that he was an FBI.
So all those movies he made were actually government conspiracies.
I mean, I'm saying, but not saying. They might be listening to us right now still. His head might be listening to us.
Might be hooked into the fifth dimension.
Yeah. His job was to report back information on Hollywood subversives, if I get that word out. I guess people who are communists, so this is like an anti-communist thing in Hollywood. I'm guessing. I don't know. All right, 1969, November 10th, Sesame Street premieres on PBS.
Did you like the Sesame Street, Eric?
I grew up on the Sesame Street.
Who doesn't like Sesame Street?
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, it was part of my early life.
Mr. Rogers, too, right after?
Yeah, Mr. Rogers. I think, does Mr. Rogers come on in the afternoon? Maybe they came on right after each other. I know Sesame Street was in the morning. I have a vivid memory of that, but... All right, 1980. Now, this is a weird story. Anchorman Dan Rather alleges a cabbie tried to kidnap him because he refused to pay his fare in dispute with a cab driver. So apparently this was a big news story back in 1980 for Dan Rather.
Wasn't he the one that kind of went off the deep end there later in life? Do you remember that? Like when he was before he retired?
I don't know. It sounds like he went off the deep end.
That's what I'm saying. It looked like it started a lot earlier.
It started earlier when he refused to pay a cab driver, and the cab driver just held him, I guess, in the cab. All right, here's a big one. November 10th, 1990, the John Hughes film Home Alone, directed by Chris Columbus and starring Macaulay Culkin. It premiered in Chicago, 1990. 1998, Star Trek Insurrection film, directed by Jonathan Frakes, starring Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes.
Okay, here we go.
Check that one out?
Here we go, Eric. I'm going to ask you. Eric, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you never watched Star Trek Insurrection.
I have not.
Number 2, Eric, who did Jonathan Frakes play in Star Trek The Next Generation?
He was the, second in command.
No,
Riker.
he's number 1.
Oh, he's the number 1.
Yeah.
But he's second in command to the captain.
I can't believe you actually got Riker.
He's Riker, right?
Yeah.
That was his name. Yeah, I watched The Next Generation, the TV show. I watched that, but
okay.
I'm not familiar with all the movies.
And Patrick Stewart, of course, is.
Yeah, he was Picard,
Yeah.
Captain Picard, yeah.
Excellent.
I do know that much. Give me a little credit.
Well, you are older now.
Yeah. All right, so 2014, let's go to the 21st century. On November 10th, 2014, The Hunger Games Mockingjay, Part 1, directed by Francis Lawrence. It was actually directed by Francis Lawrence, and it starred Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson. It premiered in London, England on 2014.
Love
Fan
the
of
Hunger
that?
Games. Of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
I read the books, too. Read the books.
Yeah, my daughter was a big fan. She read the books, and we went to the movies, and I had low expectations, but it was
Did you
really
see
good
the new
back
one?
then.
The Ballad of Songs?
Wait, no,
Snakes
I haven't
and
seen the
Songbird
newest version, but
the prequel.
I plan on watching it. 2021 will wrap up our This Day in History for 2021, November the 10th. New Zealand filmmaker Peter Jackson sells Weta Digital, I might be mispronouncing that, Weta Digital Technology Division to video games company Unity for $1.6 billion. So he's like the filmmaker that, what was the movies?
He did Lord of the Rings, Eric.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings, but didn't...
He did a King Kong.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a lesser known, but yeah, he was a big time filmmaker. He sold all. He was big in all of the digital
Computer CGI, basically.
CGI. Thank you. I can't get that word out. So CGI, he sold that company basically for $1 billion.
Did you like Lord of the Rings, Eric? I know you haven't watched them. Here we go.
I can't comment on the one.
Oh, man, that one hurt. You cut deep with that one, Eric.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make you watch them.
All right, so that's on this day in history. Back to our episode at hand. The total production cost for this episode came in at $51,305.69. And I have a few notations for dates of rehearsal and filming. So dates of rehearsal, just 1 day of rehearsal for this episode, and 3 days of filming. The date of rehearsal was May the 24th. The dates of filming were May 25th, 26th, and 29th of 1961. But there is a few addendums. So after filming was completed on May 31st, Schildkraut and Bergy taped loops. I hope they get their names right. So the two main characters. They had loops of their voices taped in the afternoon because some of the scenes filmed in the yard were not picked up loud enough through the microphone. And then a final cut was made on June 16th of 1961. And on July 7th of 1961, Schildkraut returned to the sync room at MGM to record additional lines that could not be clear enough for them to be finished. And then finally, the lobby for the hotel opening scenes of this episode was filmed on the morning of May 31st on Stage 3 at Hal Roach Studios, with Serling present for his on-screen appearance. And if you've seen the episode, you'll know what we're talking about. So that was sort of done post wrap of the episode. They added those scenes in.
And I'm going to throw something in right
yes,
here.
Sir.
They lucked out with this because I believe that the production was going to be a lot higher than what it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they lucked out because the set of Dachu, or bless you.
Dachau?
Yeah, whatever it is. It was actually, CBS had already built the set. It was for a pilot of a Western that they were going to do. The cost for it was $150,000 to $200,000 for that set.
Oh, wow.
The problem was it was located on Lot 3, of course, but it was so new that they actually had to downgrade the set by taking doors off hinges and throwing some dust around and all that. So I kind of wonder if the budget or the cost of the episode would have been higher if they would have had to build a whole new set instead of just using something already there. So
yeah, I mean,
I thought that was pretty cool.
$200,000, that would have blown their budget out of
No, that's what it cost to build the set originally, right? So they're just reusing it. So maybe they got it for free. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they just had to scrub it down a little bit and rough it up a little, I guess, to make it look aged. All right, let me give you a plot real quick, and then Jimbo can tell us about this small cast, really, for this episode. The plot goes as such. Gunther Lutz, a former captain in Hitler's SS, decides to return to the area that contains the remnants of Dachau concentration camp as he revels in the memories of the days when he had tortured prisoners. Prisoner Alfred Becker appears before his eyes. What he does not realize is Becker is a ghostly apparition and plans to put Lutz on trial for crimes against humanity for the torture and killing of the prisoners that were held in the camp. It is one trial Lutz may regret. And of course,
all right, Eric, since you gave that synopsis, I'm going to throw this. I was going to save it till the end, but that kind of...
Give it to me.
I don't know if you're ready for this. So, this is... Of course, I like history. And I had to send this to myself yesterday, so here we go. This was on December the 20th, 2022. Are you ready? From an NBC News article.
Mm-hmm.
A 97-year-old former secretary at a Nazi death camp is convicted by a German court.
Wow.
97 years old. Are you ready? What could be the last trial of its kind, Irmgard Furchtner, dubbed the Secretary of Evil, was handed a 2-year suspended sentence by a court in Itzehoe. She was convicted by a German court Tuesday of being an accessory to the murder of more than 10,000 people. And what could be the last trial of its kind...
Wait, this is a she?
Yeah, she was the secretary, Ingrid. Yeah.
Okay.
Irmgard Furchtner, dubbed the Secretary of Evil. She was just a secretary, okay, by German media, was handed a 2-year suspended sentence for helping the Stutthof concentration camp to function during World War II. The trial was briefly delayed when Furchtner went on the run by fleeing in a taxi. She's 97 years old, let's remember. Took place, but her thing took place in a juvenile court because she was 18 and 19 years old when she worked as a secretary for the camp's SS commander. So she was handed that 2-year thing for being an accessory to 10,505 counts of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder, a spokesman for the court confirmed to NBC News in an email. That's in line with what prosecutors had sought, while survivors of the death camp and relatives of the victims who appeared as joint plaintiffs also said that it was not their interest for the 97-year-old to serve any prison time. Furchtner was charged with aiding those in a position of responsibility as the former Stutthof concentration camp with the systematic killing of those in prison there due to her work as a shorthand typist or secretary in the camp commandant's office between June 1943 and April 1945, according to their press release. Her defense lawyer had asked for her to be acquitted, arguing that while it was clear that thousands of people were killed in Stutthof, the evidence did not show beyond doubt that Furchtner knew the systematic killings at the concentration camp, according to a press release by the court. In Germany, proof of intent is required for criminal liability. Earlier this month, Furchtner broke her silence and delivered unexpected final remarks. She said that she was sorry for what had happened, that she regretted that she had been at Stutthof at the time, and that she had had nothing left to say. Previously, Furchtner had attended but remained silent throughout 14 months of court hearings. Holocaust survivors and their representatives had begged Furchtner to speak up during the trial, according to German reports. So the German tabloid dubbed her the Secretary of Evil, a reference to the banality of evil, a phrase introduced by the Jewish philosopher Hannah Arendt in 1963 when reporting on the trial of Adolf Eichmann, one of the primary organizers of the Holocaust. So my question to you, Eric, so there's a little bit more in that article, but I'm not going to read the rest of it. My question to you is, do you think that former war crimes should be brought against people that were associated with as far back as as far back as World War II, specifically since age and illnesses have caught up with these. As you can tell, that lady was 97 years old. And my point to that is she was a secretary. Okay, she's not the one out there pulling the guns, hanging people, gas chambers, all that. She was just there. Could it have been that she was afraid of her life if she left? Is she going to suffer the same fate as these people?
Yeah, I mean, that's a philosophical question. At what point in the episode, as I'm thinking, it sort of tries to address it. As Lutz says, hey, like we were just following orders. Why am I guilty of, I'm just following orders. I was a soldier.
Right, but I mean, he's actually doing the killing.
Right,
but I'm talking about question, right, I'm asking just, so it's like you're at your job.
Guilt by association, kind of. That.
Right.
Where's the line drawn? I guess I don't know the answer to that question. Obviously,
I mean, no, I'm not talking about
secretary was probably not directly involved in execution, is what you're saying.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think age has anything to do with it. I don't care if you're 25 or 105. I think you should, your crimes against humanity should be punished. Yeah,
but what I'm saying is, if you're going to go through all this and waste all this money at this trial
on legal fees and
everything, she's 97 years old.
Mm-hmm.
She's not got much longer. Okay, let's be honest. So you're going to give her a 2-year commuted sentence where she's not even going to go to prison. They don't even want her to do prison times. So why go through the thing? Just label her as what she was and go on with your life.
Yeah, I could see both sides of that coin, I guess. I guess it's just the honorability of pursuing justice, right?
But what I'm saying is, even said the survivors, the Holocaust survivors and all them, they didn't even want her to spend any time in jail. They probably just want to say, okay, she did wrong. Now she knows she did wrong.
That's probably the main motivation behind it, is just to bring it to the public's consciousness and identify, like, hey, we did everything we could to bring every person responsible to justice in some form, maybe. I don't know. But
it took till 2022.
No, I understand. I mean,
since 1945. You see what I mean? There's
no argument here for me. I mean, I see both sides. You're pursuing an argument that doesn't exist. I mean, I don't know what the right answer is. For me personally,
do you think we should speed up?
The episode, it speaks for itself when Becker, at the end of the episode, and I'm jumping ahead, he says, this is ultimately, you will be punished by God. And every person, whether they were directly involved in executions or you're a secretary, outside of a concentration camp or whatever, they're ultimately going to be brought to justice.
Right, but to me, like, the company I work for, the company you work for, that's like saying somebody at your company dies in a truck accident, plane accident, but they want to hold you responsible because you helped load that truck.
Right.
But that's for another podcast.
Right. This is a big topic that would take a lot longer to explore.
All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that rabbit trail, but I wanted to bring that up in light of that's where my mind went to when we watched this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question to ponder. I just don't have a good answer on where you draw the line. What you're in or you're out? Are you following orders or you're directly participating? I don't know where that line is. Obviously, this is very dark subject matter, and it will, as we'll come to find out, Rod did a masterful job of bringing this episode to its conclusion. But tell us about the cast.
Sorry about that rabbit trail, but I had to get that out of there. That's what happens when you do your notes at 2 a.m. You start thinking about these crazy things. All right, so here we go. Joseph Schildkraut. He played Alfred Becker, did a fantastic job in this. He was in a movie called The Shop Around the Corner in 1940. He was in a movie called The Life of Emile Zola, which he won an Oscar for, where he played Dreyfus. He was in The Diary of Anne Frank, where he played her father. And he was also in The Greatest Story Ever Told, where he played Nicodemus. Then you had Oscar Barragee Jr. He played SS Captain Gunther Lutz. Eric, you might remember him from a little Twilight Zone episode we did just last season called The Rip Van Winkle Caper. Obviously, he gave another outstanding performance here. He was also in Young Frankenstein, one of my favorite movies, where he was the sadistic jailer. You had Karen Verne. who played the innkeeper. I thought she did a really good job. She portrayed her fear very well. And she was in a movie called All Through the Night, 1942. Robert Boone, he was the taxi driver. He was in Queen of Blood in 1966. He was also in the Elvis Presley movie G.I. Blues, where he played a German guitarist uncredited. Eric, you ever seen the old G.I. Blues?
I have not.
Really? Man, here we're just catching you all off guard today.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Then you had Ben Wright, who was the doctor. He was in The Sound of Music in 1965, where he played Herr Zeller, or Zelfer. I can't read my handwriting today. He was also in The Little Mermaid animated series, where he played Grimsby, the voice of Grimsby. And then you had a couple of these uncredited casualties, prisoners of war, if you will. You had Gene Coogan. He was in the movie called Peter Gunn in 1958. Chuck Fox. He was in Batman 1966 TV show where he played the Thin Man for 2 episodes. You had Jimmy Horan. He was in the TV show F Troop, if you remember that TV show, Eric. And he was in a little Disney movie called Blackbeard's Ghost, if you ever saw that, where he was a gambler, where he's uncredited for that as well. And then you had David O. McCall. He was in Peter Gunn. You had Martin Strader, who was another victim, and then Arthur Tovey, who was another victim, and then, of course, Rod Serling, no explanation needed.
As himself, right? All right, so as you open the episode, we open in the lobby of a hotel or a inn or whatever, and the woman at the front desk has a look of fear and horror here shortly. And we'll see Lutz is checking into the inn. You talked about that. She did a great job of fear, washes over her face, really. And then she knows something's out of place, right? She knows that this person looks familiar, but he's signed in his name as, I forget what his name was when he signed in, like
Schmidt.
Yeah, he signed in, Lutz signed in under a different name. And he says, "Is anything wrong?" And he, proceeds to check in under a fake name. The innkeeper takes some ease as she says Lutz, she's uneasy because she says Lutz reminded her of someone. And Lutz, he plays dumb. And he's like, "Hey, I'm back. Was this a prison or something that you had here?" As he's conversing with her. And an interesting note, I heard something, well, just as how she portrays, what's her name she's just the innkeeper.
Yeah.
Her name's Karen Verne, the actress. But just something I heard in passing, I guess the German people, for a long time after the war, took on sort of like a collective guilt for German people, even just like in what we were talking about before, even though they weren't directly involved, they still took on somewhat of a corporate or a countryman type of guilt because of all of the atrocities that happened. And I think they felt that as a country, and that you can kind of pick up on that as Lutz is asking her about the area. Of course, he knows all this because he was previously here, but she talks about Dachau, and she almost whispers Dachau, the name, when he's conversing back and forth with her. Like, she doesn't want to acknowledge like what happened. I thought that was really cool. So the tension builds after he asks, "Was this a prison you had here or something?" And then he gives her some, some story that he was in Russia during the war on the Panzer Division or whatever. Yeah. And he's completely lying. So the tension, it builds, and Schmidt again plays dumb, and then the innkeeper, she replies, almost whispering, "It was Dachau, sir. It was a prison. It was a concentration camp." And Lutz says, "Of course, Dachau, the camp. It's that group of buildings up there on the hill, isn't it?" And the innkeeper says, "It is indeed, but most of us would like it burned to the ground." And that's the point. Like, this stands as a monument of shame for a lot of the German people. It's very interesting,
too, that it was built on top of a hill. So everybody had to look up to see it every day, too.
Yeah, which we'll get. That's actually, I think that might be in the Goose section, but we'll get to that in a moment. But Rod's narration then begins. This is kind of cool narration in the fact that it begins in the inn, and then the scene changes to the concentration camp as a taxi pulls up, and then Luther Gunz gets out, and then the gate is actually open, and he goes into the deserted camp as Rod finishes up his narration. So normally the camera's focused on him, and he delivers it, but the scenes actually change a couple of times in his narration.
Something that really bothered me is Lutz took off his hat and gloves and just left them on the counter.
Yeah.
I was waiting to see if they showed back up here at the concentration camp. They don't. No, he just left them right there on the desk.
Yeah, that's a good pickup. So that's scene 1. Really, we end the prologue of scene 1. Then Act 2 opens with another title shot. These are starting to be moving title shots now. They're not just freeze frame pictures, which I like that. It's kind of cool.
And I like this when he walks in. He walks in kind of slow first. Then he goes into like his march of he's in command. I think it's perfectly done.
Yeah, the goose Nazi walk or whatever they did. Yeah, his head is straight up. His shoulders are back, and he's almost
back in character.
Yeah, he's totally back in character. And you can kind of pick up in the end that he's really, I don't know. You just get this sense of. He's a bad dude, and I had this in my notes, and I'll just read it. We realized very early in the episode that Lutz is despicable by the manner in which he berates the innkeeper, right?
Yep.
And his arrogance is almost like a default mode. You pick up on that really early. He goes into default mode as the SS captain. His feelings of disgust, your feelings for disgust for him, they rise up really early in the viewer's psyche. You don't like this guy immediately. And you detect something isn't right. I mean, if you're just coming into this cold and you don't really know the story, say you're watching, you're just binging these episodes in a row, and you come into it, I mean, immediately that's going to stick with you. So, back to Act 2, we got the title shot, and as you talked about, Jimbo, he walks briskly to the bunkhouse and turns for a real close-up shot, and he's remembering all the hangings that took place in the yard, and he has a real sense of satisfaction that washes over his face.
You love to hate the dude, man.
Oh, man. He's the perfect villain.
Oh, yeah.
So then all the people, the ghost hangings or whatever, they disappear. And he strolls through the bunkhouse, and he reminisces of, his treachery and then, making all the prisoners get out of bed and do their exercises.
I like how they did the side-by-side shot, too, of him.
Right.
So it's showing, him as Schmidt and him as Lutz, where he's in his uniform and he just looks evil.
Exactly. He walks outside and he remembers the quote-unquote good times in the detention center. Whew, just pure evil. So Lutz returns to the gallows stand.
Kicks the door open of the detention center.
Right. Oh, yeah, we're at that point where he's kicking in the detention center. And then I think there's a flashback scene here, too, inside the detention center of all of the tortures and the execution. Yeah.
And you got Hitler, of course, hanging on the wall, the picture of Hitler in the background.
Traditional background.
I think that's where the guys ask him for water, and he's like, it's been 5 days since you've had any food or water or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and then after this, he'll return to the gallows stand, and this is where we meet former inmate Alfred Becker, man, his guy's masterful in this episode. His delivery of the lines, I mean, it's bone-chilling, and the actual script is so good. I mean, I'm just blown away. So Becker meets him. He says, "Good afternoon, Captain, and welcome back. We've been waiting," right? But chilling.
And I think he's starting to hear what he thinks is the wind blowing.
Right.
But you come to find out it's not the wind. It's all the screams of
There he is, standing on the porch of the bunkhouse. So good. One other thing that I will point out here is just the contrast between the two characters. One is a big, burly, tall man in
Lutz.
Beregi, and then, Schildkraut is thin, smaller of stature, and, just that contrast between the two characters.
Well, it's probably because of the Germans reading and the...
Yeah, bully versus
POWs
bully,
right.
That becomes, well, it's far beyond bullying, but that becomes very apparent. I like that distinction there. And then right after they have this little exchange, we go to a commercial, and then when we come back... this becomes kind of dialogue heavy, right? Because they're reacquainting, so to speak, with one another, and we realize that I'll just pick out a few things that we glean from the dialogue. I won't go through it all, obviously. Lutz has been gone for 17 years, and Lutz says that Becker looks the same, and he hasn't seemed to have changed. And Lutz attempts to make light of the situation, right? He's like, oh, those are different times. These are happier times now. He's sort of trying to get excuse me, Becker to sort of dismiss all of the atrocities of the past, and he even attempts to lean in and hug Becker, and Becker recoils, as a strange look sort of washes over his face. I think we're about to get to that part right here, maybe here in a minute. And then Jimbo, you said you really start to distinctly hear the wind howling, because Becker even comments on it. He's like, the wind never used to bother you before.
Yeah, he's perhaps it is the wind.
Yeah. And Lutz, throughout the whole exchange, Becker is calling him captain through all of this. And then Lutz exclaims, "Stop calling me captain. I'm not a soldier anymore." Yeah. Right? And he wants to dissociate himself from his former life. He doesn't want to think about that, that raises a question. I'll wait to the end, and questions and observation I'll ask you, Jimbo. So you kind of see the fear and the anxiety start to creep in. And then here, Becker just delivers. I've got some quotes here. I'll just read them out. These lines are excellent. Becker says, "No, Captain, you were a sadist. You were a monster. You were a monster who derived pleasure from giving pain." And again, Lutz just attempts to gloss over his deeds, and he says, "Well, we just were doing as we were told." And then right here, a stinging monologue is delivered by Becker describing all the atrocities that were perpetrated by Lutz. And Lutz tries to run away and leave, but the gate is locked this time.
Yep.
And then this is a great line. I highlighted it. Becker says, "Don't ask the impossible, Captain Lutz. Don't ask forgiveness from those whom you have destroyed to a point past forgiveness." I thought that was a great line.
But I think it's here too, when he's I think it's when he's reading the atrocities against him. And he said, "This is inhumane." Lutz is like, "This is inhumane," and you're thinking to yourself,
right. Like, how do you
just
have the
killed
audacity?
you've killed a bunch of people in your life, and you think this is inhumane because he's bringing charges against you,
right? And that brings us to this part. Becker says, "Now it's time for his trial, and the court is in Compound 6, up in the bunkhouse, Compound 6." And the captain, like you said, he's indignant. He says, "By whom? Who will try me? Like,
where's the jury? Where's the judge?"
Yeah. And the captain will soon find himself on the floor of Compound 6. Right? He's transported, and he's laying on the floor. And Jimbo, you got anything in here? This we're a little before this scene, but the scene is a great scene when he is put back in the bunkhouse floor, and he's looking up, and who is standing around him?
Well,
right? All the guys.
Yes, but I think this when he looks up and they're all upside down.
Yes, that's what I wanted to point out.
I think that was really cool.
It's important to mention here the work of the cinematography. It rotates like 180 degrees while he's on the floor, and all of the inmates are still in their rags uniform or whatever they had on, the clothing they had.
Uniforms,
and they're standing in like a half semicircle, and the camera just does a 180 degree turn as he's on the floor. I thought that was a really good cinematography.
There's several really good cinematography shots on this episode.
Right.
And I'm going to go out on a limb. Eric, we've watched a lot of Twilight Zones, and I know we're almost halfway through, but can you tell me another episode where the dynamic between the two actors was as good as this?
Honestly, off the top of my head, I can't.
The only one that could probably even come close is when the dude slit his throat, the silence or whatever, and him. But it was mainly just one guy talking there. This actually has two guys going at it,
right? And
it's superb.
Yeah, definitely. So we're just now getting here in a moment. Like I said, that there was a heavy monologue by Becker, and we're about to go into the bunkhouse, and we're going to go on trial here. Lutz is going to go on trial, and we sort of, it's just really cool. Again, going back to that cinematography, the look on the faces of all the inmates, the ghostly, if you will, inmates, I mean, that's a great shot too. Just their expressions, their dead, dull, empty expressions. I mean, it's gold. I mean, it's really powerful. Then Captain Lutz, he kind of begins to crack a little bit, and Becker begins to read the charges. He rolls out like a big board,
parchment.
or like parchment, or like a scroll. Yeah, almost a scroll, and begins to Lutz begins to like pull at his tie, and he begins to cry out and sweat, and then he screams really loudly before passing out. And then Lutz awakes, only to see Becker. All of the other men have gone, and he believes that it's only been a dream that he's had. And then we progress a little bit farther along, and I think he crawls like over to the window. I don't know, you might want to skip ahead a little bit.
That's another good thing that Becker says. He's like, don't you remember, you used to burn cigarette butts out on me and laugh about it. And I was like, man, this guy is just pure evil.
Right. And so we're just now to the cinematography she shot inside the bunkhouse. And so once Lutz wakes up, and then I think he like crawls over to a window or something, and he smashes a window, and then he sort of resorts back again to giving commands because he's starting to crack up. He's
commanding his officers, hey, get them in line out there, do this, do that.
He starts to, the insanity starts to creep in, if you will, but he's confused as to how Becker is standing in front of him. He sort of has like an aha moment. He's like, how are you standing in front of me when I already killed you? He realized that he killed Becker on the night that the Americans came close to the concentration camp.
He's like, I already killed you.
Like, how am I seeing you?
That's right, Captain. The night the Americans came, you killed me before basically they came in. And is this the shot where he goes to choke him or whatever, and he ends up choking the fence post or the gallows?
The captain lunges at Becker to strangle him, but his hands immediately strangle a gallows post. We're transported again back outside. Becker's voice from above, like he's not present in the shot, he declares Lutz's judgment is that from this day forward you shall be rendered insane. And Lutz runs around in a panic as he feels the torture of all who he has murdered. So if he was hung them or shot them.
That's what I was going to say. Like, he takes him out to the gallows, and he gets kind of like choking. And then he's like, when he takes him to the one place, I think it's the detention center, he said, you did things in there that was despicable that we can't even talk about, basically. And if you pay attention to Lutz, I wanted to point this out. There are several things, if you watch his body language. The first is he goes to his eyes. Like, he must have done something with plucking their eyes out or something. And then he did almost like a choking thing, like maybe from the gas.
Right.
And then he did something like in his gut, like maybe he stabbed him or punched him or something in the gut. And then he even goes to his groin. And then he goes to like his legs or whatever and bulls up. So the tortures that they went through historically is portrayed there, even though they don't talk about it. It just shows you how really, truly evil the Nazis and the concentration camp. I don't want to call this a concentration camp. Let's not get it wrong. It's an extermination camp because Dachau was a extermination camp where they killed the Jews. So
I think it was the number one.
Right. So as them saying it's a concentration camp, no, this is where they went to kill people.
Right.
So it's very, very heavy, dark. So, but I just wanted to point that out. That I thought it's just the little things of where he went through all those different motions to portray the different kinds of tortures that your imagination can run to.
Yeah, that was it. Interesting. I think there was even like some gunfire like in the audience.
Oh yeah, because they said here's where that was the first before he went to the gallows. Like here's where you feel the thousands of bullets going through your body. He's like, Yeah.
And then I just have one final quote, and then we can. This is from Becker. If there's still any portion of your mind that can still function, take this thought with you. This is not hatred. This is retribution. This is not revenge. This is justice. But this is only the beginning, Captain. Only the beginning. Your final judgment will come from God. And then, I stand corrected. The last notation I have here is the doctor's question. Why, speaking of Dachau, why does it still stand? Why do we keep it standing? And then that question is answered, I thought, brilliantly in Rod's closing narration. And then we come to the end of the episode of why these are monuments so that we don't forget, never forget. The motto of 9/11 is never forget. And that's why those places stood for as long as they did, because they wanted people to remember all of the terrible things that happened there. So dark episode, but a very good episode for sure. Any trivia you want to launch into first?
Let me see here. I think I have something in this book I would like to read. It's not very long. It's just a paragraph or two, but I know a lot of this other stuff will be rehashed and probably some of your notes. I didn't want to double dip. But here we go. This is, of course, in Rod Serling and the Twilight Zone, the 50th anniversary tribute by Douglas Brody and Carol Serling. So, though a villain, Lutz resembles hero Martin Sloan heading back to Homewood or Gart Williams and mythical Willoughby. Lutz admits that, quote, one grows nostalgic for the good old days. The goodness of those characters was clear in their yearning for quaint carousels on summer afternoons. Lutz's wickedness has him longing for torture without restriction. Though nostalgia is common to good and bad, what we miss defines us. As this story closes, ghosts of past victims find their peace after revisiting on Lutz the horrors he forced on them. No doubt Lutz would gladly go gently into that good night, but he doesn't deserve quietude. The ultimate punishment is to live on in pain. That the metaphysical is at work is clear from Serling's finale. Why do the doghouse remain standing? Those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Without constant reminders, that might be our destiny. This must be avoided, as Rod at last says, wherever men walk God's earth. Serling never involves the term God lightly.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was very well said.
Yep. Very well said. Let's go to the origins, trivia-wise, of this episode. Rod Serling was inspired to write this teleplay based on the trial of Otto Adolf Eichmann, referred to by a newspaper columnist as the architect of the Holocaust, who was captured by Israeli Mossad agents in Argentina and put on trial in an Israeli court on 15 criminal charges, including crimes against humanity. I think that trial, some portions of it are available on YouTube as well. I think you can pull it up, and it's in German, of course, but I think there's a translator over it. But if you ever wanted to check that out, I guess. Eichmann's trial started on April 11th, 1961, and caused huge international controversy as well as international sensation. The Israeli government allowed news programs all over the world to broadcast the trial live with few restrictions. Within 2 weeks of the trial's initial telecast in the United States, Serling wrote Death's Head Revisited. The title was a play on the Evelyn Waugh novel Brideshead Revisited. Sorry. Never heard or read that book, but various witnesses at the trial included Holocaust survivors who testified against Eichmann and his role in transporting victims to the extermination camps. Serling borrowed some of that testimony for the dialogue Becker would use against Lutz. So that's, plucked right out of the actual trial logs for some of the actual script here. The title itself is a little wordplay of the novel Bride's Head Revisited. Again, we talked about that. It refers to the Totenkampf. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Totenkampf. It's a death's head symbol used by the SS during World War II, depicting a skull and crossbones. I think they used to wear it like on their uniform. Mm-hmm. It was like a pin or whatever. It's a skull and crossbone. It's distinguished from earlier traditions of skull and crossbones because it's positioned directly behind the skull. Like the Jolly Roger, I think, was like skull and crossbone. Jolly Roger was used in like pirate ships and whatever. It's different in that the skull and crossbones, the bones are behind the skull. I think the bones are in front of the skull. I'm not exactly sure on that, but they basically borrowed that from the Jolly Roger. Serling had failed to get Joseph Schildkraut for the lead in The Obsolete Man, so he was due to play the Obsolete Man. So he offered the role of Rabbi Heller in Playhouse 90 presentation, In the Presence of Mine Enemy. Schildkraut, through instinct, turned down the role. As Serling later commented, Leighton, of course, did not help us. How can you show a thin, shabby, yet terribly sensitivity of a rabbi in a gross fat head who eats 6 meals a day? In a letter to Schildkraut dated 1961 on March the 8th, Serling apologized for not getting the role in the Twilight Zone, explaining that you're one of the funniest talents to come down the pike in the last 50 years. For you to do a show for me would be a unique honor, and it's to that end that I will work. So he thought a lot of Schildkraut But that role of Rabbi Heller, he thought better of it, I guess, because, that makes sense that Schillenkraut was a big, burly, tall, and strapping guy. The role called for like a more frail, smaller rabbi role. While Schillenkraut played the victim of Beregi, his tormentor in truth, the two had been best friends for years. Their fathers, also actors, sharing billing as well as friendship as far back as 1905 when they worked with the great German director Max Reinhardt. The Beregis moved into the Schillenkraut home in Vienna in 1920 when the Schillenkrauts moved to America. So they were close friends. That would make sense why their dialogue and playing off each other and chemistry was so good. They had known each other for a long time. Dachau was the first Nazi concentration camp. Beregi and Schillenkraut both hailed from distinguished Yiddish stage families and had lost most of their European relatives in the Holocaust. So this hit home on so many different levels. I mean, they were of Jewish descent themselves, and many of their family members had been exterminated in the camps. And then Captain Lutz is described as a Dachau commandant who served until the camp was captured, after which he fled to safe exile. In fact, no Dachau commandant who served after 1936 was alive at the time this episode was made. By the late 1940s, all of the later commandants of Dachau had either committed suicide, died in battle, or been executed for war crimes. So there was none of them around when the episode aired. Notably, the ending narration includes the words "the Twilight Zone" in the middle rather than the end.
I thought that was really cool.
Right. Oscar Beregi also appeared in two other episodes. Jimbo talked about that: the Rip Van Winkle Caper and Mute in 1963. I didn't know that he was in Mute.
We haven't watched Mute yet, though.
Well, I know, but I'm.
You're way out. We were way out.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't realize that. They kept referring to him as Captain. This was a simplification of the true SS rank, which is not Captain, but equivalent to it. His SS rank was actually, I'm going to mispronounce this word, Sturmboffer. Sturmboffer? I don't know. That's terrible German, but for Beregi, the irony of this Twilight Zone appearance was the place setting the infamous Nazi camp at Dachau. Beregi narrowly escaped what he assumed would be a one-way trip there by his timely flight across the Atlantic. Safe in Buenos Aires, Beregi organized the Free German Theater and the Hungarian Exile Theater Group. Later, he made Argentina's first anti-Nazi film, which was entitled What Happened That Night. We'll just talk about two more trivias and a couple goofs, and we can wrap this up. The episode prompted a letter from one irate viewer, Miss Elmo Holloman of Alexandria, Louisiana, suggesting that Serling had a preoccupation with Nazism on television and might have been an overt act somehow, communist in nature. Serling rejected her notion offhand and stated this is simply not true. I don't know how you get that he had he was actually trying to send the exact opposite message.
Well, I think, he does do a lot of stuff against Hitler and stuff like that in his, or portrays him a lot in his
Right, yeah, I
series.
guess I could kind of see that point, but he did fight in the war, and so obviously you write what you know,
right.
So yeah, apparently this...
He should have wrote back and said, "Tickle me, Elmo."
Yeah, Miss Elmo did not appreciate it and somehow thought this was an overt act of communism. I don't get that, but... and I won't even read this last notation because I never can... It's a review by the Hollywood Reporter, and if I read it, maybe we can talk about this off air. I can't tell if they liked the episode or they didn't.
Well, read it. Let me just read it to me.
See what you think. All right, let's see what you think, Jimbo. This was in November 13th, 1961 issue of the Hollywood Reporter. Reviewed this episode of The Twilight Zone. Quote, "Idea was bold new evidence of the author's prowess, although action, building to spirit world version of Eichmann's trial with Berger facing jury of gas chamber specters seemed less unreal than intended. Impression was that this material called for and got special treatment outside the series format."
Yeah, it seems like he's slamming the episode.
Criticizing just a little bit because it's outside the format and it was so direct.
Right.
This was direct from Rod's pen, right? There was no...
Yeah.
Veil.
So they didn't really care for the episode.
Right.
They were wrong, but...
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
Of course, it's Hollywood. They're always going to...
I mean, they just mix in a plethora of words that, you never really can kind of tell. So here's a couple of goofs. And then I'll get to your questions and observations, Jimbo. The episode was set in 1962, 17 years after the end of the war. Dachau is shown abandoned. However, after the war, it remained open, first as a prison and then as a refugee camp until the mid-1960s. So they didn't even tear it down until the mid-60s. The prisoner barracks are shown to have masonry-type walls. In fact, the one-story barracks were constructed of wood inside and out. Also, there were no trees in the interior of Dachau. This area was flat and devoid of vegetation. Trees would have been obstructed the view from the watchtowers and possibly offered a means of escape, especially the ones close to the surrounding barbed wire fence. And that sentence reminds me of The Great Escape, and how they were digging under and they had to get to the tree line outside of the camp.
Yep.
The Dachau concentration camp is said to be up on a hill. In fact, the campsite is on the low, flat ground east of the town. So it's not actually up on a hill. And that's it for as far as the goofs go. Jimbo, thoughts, feelings,
all right,
interjections.
All right, let me go. Here we go. To me, this episode is probably one of the best of the entire series. The cinematography is excellent. The actors are spot on. You love to hate Lutz. You love to see him get his just desserts at the end, if you will. And being part German, and I know you are too. It's something that's in our heritage. Because I'm a big history guy, and I like to study, the Germans and World War II, World War I, and all that. But you go, even if you go on YouTube, and you can watch, I think it's Auschwitz or whatever the concentration camp where somebody put a drone and they go over and they tour the camp, and your mind goes to see what the horrors that those people faced, especially the Jews, and not just Jews, but mostly Jews because of Hitler and what he did. This is a tough episode to watch, but I think far too often that we take for granted the people and the things that happened before us, and we're such a society that are such pansies now, and that they want to take away anything that has to do with history, so people will forget. When you start taking away the stuff that your history is made from, then you're going to end up forgetting those people, and it's just going to become a legend. Eric, and I know that in this country today, we have people taking down monuments, statues, basically trying to erase history. I understand that those statues and those monuments, even the concentration camps, extermination camps, if you will, they may be a sore subject for some people. Maybe certain ethnicity groups, whatever. But when you start taking away stuff, then what are you going to teach your children, or what are you going to leave the next generation? To me, I give this a 10 out of a 10. It tugs at your heartstrings. And I know it's going to be in my top 3 at the end of the season. It's one of the best Twilight Zone episodes I had ever seen, and I had never watched it until we covered it when we were going to cover this a couple weeks ago. It's just such an important Twilight Zone to watch, and it gets you in your feelings. It makes you think about a lot of stuff. That's why I brought up the 97-year-old lady that was just a secretary. We must not forget that, yes, what happened to the Jews and everybody is terrible tragedy. It really is. But there were also Germans' lives that were affected too, that may have not been in it willingly, that they may have been forced. So I do believe that there should be some justice for everybody that had an involvement with it. But to me, I mean, I have nothing more to say. This is a perfect episode in my opinion. So with that, the prop I would take from this,
I don't feel. I'm just going to say up front, I don't feel comfortable taking any props.
I don't either. I mean, you don't want to say I'll take the detention sign or something like, or his hat or gloves or insignia or anything like the picture of Hitler or anything. So if I had to take something, I would take, if you go back to the innkeeper, there is on the back wall, there is a clock that looks like a giant watch. I'm going to go with that just to hang it, just so, because not only that, it'd be symbolizes of, hey, time moves on, but time does not heal all wounds.
Yeah.
So that's my feelings, ratings. Yeah. Eric, what about you?
The expression, we stand on the shoulders of giants, was going through my mind as you were describing that. And a lot of people do. They want to erase history and they want to forget about the good and the bad. I mean, you have to take history for what it is. And you can't, erase the parts of history that you don't like, as painful as they are. They're reminders of, hopefully, progress that we've made in certain areas. And obviously this is condemned and despicable, horrible atrocities that happened all those many years ago. But the farther we get removed from it, our tendency is to forget and to not hold up those things and to not guard against returning, even in our own country, and letting things slide, if you will, and not being ready and watchful of that something similar couldn't happen. I'm not advocating that there is something, but it's just being watchful, being ready and understanding and having a good understanding of like the great sacrifices that were made by our own American soldiers in that war, to the things that provided for us as descendants of those people. So I don't really have much else to say. I just have a question for you. Why do you think that Lutz returned to the scene of his crimes? Do you think it's because he's like a murderer?
Well, that's what I had that in my notes too. Why do serial killers or even murderers, they always go back to where they're so stupid. Like a
psychological compulsion?
Like they want to say, hey, I got away with it. They don't know it's me. You know what I mean? My thing is, I think the supernatural element of this made him go back, because he could have just said, "Hey, I'm Schmidt." He could have just went up there. He didn't even have to go in the gates. But once he entered those gates, he was back to the captain. He takes a few steps, then he starts his march. His thing, and then he starts remembering all this stuff. So, was it a predestined thing for him to go back, or was he just that confident that he wasn't going to get caught?
I think it's a good thing that the storyteller, Rod, doesn't tell us why. What was his compulsion to go back? That's kind of left out of the story. And you're just, was he on a train and he just decided to get off at Dachau or whatever? Was it because he lived this lesser life, underground life, and he was remembering the life that great life that he had as this big, strong, powerful, in command commandant, and he missed that life, and now he's doomed to a life of anonymity, and he just wants a little piece. Yeah, I mean, there could have been a lot of motivations.
Well, there has. Now, here we go. You had to get me
We're
started.
Speculating.
Well, no, you had to get me started. There has been rumors, urban legends, if you will, that Hitler did escape World War II and ended up in South America, even Antarctica in some cases. I think they said he just came back from South America, right?
Right.
This guy?
Yeah, so he was the same place that the true Eichmann was in Argentina.
I mean, you never know. That's for history or whatever. So, Eric, what are you rating this?
Well, I'm going to rate it. I'm going to rate it like a 9.5. I mean, it's better than The Eye of the Beholder. It's a straight tell, and I'll just give you a couple of reasons why. This episode puts fantasy and allegory aside to reflect on real horror. And then one IMDb user, I thought this was good. he said that this is an important retelling of the Holocaust and should be seen by every generation. That kind of touches on what we just talked about. Every generation needs to be familiar with this episode's content. It's a chilling portrait of evil, this episode, and the acting is absolutely superb. I give it a 9.5, and like I said previously, I'm not going to take any items out of the
camp.
Yeah, out of the camp or anything like that. But
I guess maybe the sign-in book would be pretty cool to have. The registration.
Right. Yeah, I just wouldn't feel comfortable taking any kind of prop piece. But IMDb rated it 8.1. I think it's underrated by users, and actually the next episode that we're going to do is actually rated higher. I don't think that's correct. But with that, I'm finished.
Well, so keep this in mind. This is one of those episodes that Eric and I pretty much agree on. It's few and far between. As you can tell, they knocked it out of the park with this one, and the next one kind of starts going back the other way, if you will. So if you'd like to follow us, we are The Tragedy of Cinema on Facebook. If you want to reach out to us, we are thetragedyofcinema@gmail.com. If you want to leave us a review, feel free. If you want to leave us your thoughts and feelings on this episode in an email, send it to us. We'll do one of those little, I don't know, real talk, but the Twilight Zone version where it's just me and Eric answering questions or discussing things that have happened in the Twilight Zone. So, with that being said, I think this episode's coming to a close, and that's a wrap.
And cut.
Why does it still stand? Why do we keep it standing? There is an answer to the doctor's question. All the Dachau's must remain standing. The Dachau's, the Belsens, the Buchenwalds, the Auschwitzes. All of them. They must remain standing because they are a monument to a moment in time when some men decided to turn the earth into a graveyard. Into it they shoveled all of their reason, their logic, their knowledge, but worst of all, their conscience. And the moment we forget this, the moment we cease to be haunted by its remembrance, then we become the gravediggers. Something to dwell on and to remember. Not only in the Twilight Zone, but wherever men walk God's earth.